I want to introduce a fantastic brother, um, uh, a advocate, a leader in getting the information to everyone about Haitian affairs, about Haitian history, about how we can help Haiti now. It's my pleasure to introduce to you brother Pierre LaBossiere. I hope I'm saying your name correctly.
Yes, you said it correctly.
All right, all right, great, great.
Welcome,
Thank you
welcome.
so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Minister. It's such a pleasure and an honor for me to be with you. As we mentioned earlier, Jose has been there with us from the very beginning, going back to the early 80s, you know, when our brothers and sisters, refugees, came to the Bay Area. Also, it's a continuation of who we are as a people, one people. The history of Haiti, people know it. Many people do, many don't. But we are an African people kidnapped from our mother continent, and they took men, women, and children, brought them to these shores. But according to Ivan Vencertima, Haiti itself, which in the Arawak language means also land of mountains, but it also means not to obey in many African languages. And so Black folks were coming to the shores of that island way before Columbus, according to Ivan Vencertima. And our people were visiting there, and the Arawaks and the Taínos explained to Christopher Columbus, they told him that. And so that was very, very clear. So I start our history going way back to Africa, the Africa that we built, Africa, the birthplace of civilization, the place of learning, the place that they gave birth to math and the sciences. So this is where our history began. And we are people who were kidnapped and forced into slavery. From the very beginning, 1503, when the first kidnapped Africans were brought to the shores of what became Haiti, after the Spanish conducted a genocidal war against the Arawaks and the Taínos, destroying them, they resisted very strongly. So when the first kidnapped Africans came, they joined with the Taínos and the Arawaks immediately and started a resistance against slavery. And so they were successful together with the Arawaks and the Taínos in carving up a piece of land that became independent. And it was set up in the mountains of what's today the Dominican Republic and Haiti. And so the desire for freedom was in our blood. We were born free, we were from civilizations, we were free people, and we were not going to accept slavery. And so that continued, that spirit of resistance. It went on when the French took over from the Spanish in the Western Third, which is today Haiti, because we share the island with the Dominican Republic. The French fought the Spanish, and so they got 1/3 of the island, which is present-day Haiti. And so they started a brutal system of plantation slavery, during which, and that plantation slavery was so awful that it was estimated that the average life expectancy of a kidnapped and enslaved African was about 10 years, 10 to 15 years, no more. And, but our people came from different parts of Africa, and they came together and they fought. They decided to fight. There were many rebellions. One of them that I want to mention in particular, which is not known, is the rebellion by Macandal. And Brother Macandal, and it wasn't just breaking the chains or running into the mountains. They had a vision of a new society, to build a society similar to what they had left behind in Africa. A society based on egalitarianism, a society where people are valued, a society where, as human beings, they are not going to put up with anything about slavery. And so Brother Macandal's vision was to free the land. And I'm paraphrasing many of his statements, but he thought in terms of getting rid of the French. And it was an island-wide rebellion. Unfortunately, the French caught him. They burned him alive. But Macandal said the French can never kill him because he will become a mosquito and continue the struggle. And he was making a reference to the spirit of freedom, to the spirit of the continuation of the fight. So by 1791, Macandal's prophecy came true because there was a brother from Jamaica, Bookman Doty, and a woman named Cecile Fatima, who picked up the mantle of Macandal and organized people. And they had a religious ceremony, a Vodou ceremony. Vodou, by the way, means spirit in the Fon language. And so in that religious ceremony, they pledged to fight together, all for one and one for all. And that started, and they decided that all the plantations would strike at once. Not just this plantation rebelling, but everybody rising up. And that strategy worked. They were successful. And that started the 13-year war that gave rise to Haiti becoming a nation in 1804. So the big rebellion started on August 14, 1791, and Haiti, and it culminated in Haiti proclaiming its independence in 1804. In the process, Haiti defeated the French, the British, and the Spanish. I'm not talking about a small little squadron of soldiers. I'm talking about generals, English generals like Maitland, who had to come in front of Toussaint Louverture and Dessalines and Christophe and sign a surrender to this man who just a few years before was he was a slave. He was an enslaved African, and who they were ordering around and beating up and what have you. So they had in front of them, and I'm sorry about this, I'm having a little trouble with this. And so he had to sign that treaty. Also with the Spanish generals, they had to surrender as well to people who they thought were subhumans, who they acted towards as subhumans. And the French generals ended up being defeated as well by Dessalines and many of them. Now, something to keep in mind. In Haitian tradition, we have what we call the 21 nations. These were the 21 various groups from Africa who were kidnapped and brought to the island. Together, they brought their religious beliefs with them, and out of that came the Vodou religion. Also, they founded a new language, the Creole language, which is a mixture of French, African, many Indian words, some Spanish words, but very much, founding that. And Haiti didn't become Haiti, not until after independence, you see. Haiti was the 21 nations from Africa, and that's how we say it in Creole, 21 nations. And so they came together, pulled together their resolve, their determination to be free. And once Haiti became independent, Haiti declared itself not only a free nation, but a sanctuary country, called on all Africans who were enslaved. If they could find a way to come to Haiti, once they touch Haitian soil, they would automatically be Haitian citizens, and Haiti would go to war to defend their freedom. And Haiti also invited all indigenous people of indigenous origin who had been in the struggle against colonialism to come to Haiti, and Haiti would defend their freedom. So I'm saying this because the first few years of Haitian independence, people were pretty much focused on reuniting the families. At the time that Haiti became a nation, 66% of our foremothers and forefathers had been born in Africa and had been kidnapped into slavery. They knew that their relatives had been taken in different parts because the practice was to separate the families so as to reduce any means of communication and togetherness, so as to effectively reduce any chance of successful uprisings. So one of the things that people wanted to do was reconnect with their family members. And so Haiti started on this appeal. And one of the thoughts in the minds, one of the goals of Toussaint Louverture, after he defeated the Spanish and the British, he was looking into a way to maybe have an army go to Africa and to fight right there on the continent to stop this evil of slavery. Now, this was no pipe dream because Toussaint was the grandson of an African chieftain of the Alada nation. They knew from the people, brothers and sisters, our foremothers and forefathers, the reality of the slave trade. They knew the reality of what was going on the continent. And so for them, they came together and wanted to do this. Now they did it. After independence, Haiti sent soldiers to help in many countries in South America, to help win the freedom and abolish slavery in many nations there. And they helped Simon Bolivar. Also next door, the Dominican Republic, the Spanish still controlled it. It wasn't the Dominican Republic, it was a Spanish possession. Haiti went in there, kicked out the Spanish and abolished slavery. See, you don't hear about a lot.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold it right there. Really?
Yes, indeed.
I mean, and the way that the Dominican Republic is, the way they act towards Haitian, I never knew that.
That's right. That's
wow.
Right. Haiti abolished slavery there, and from I believe it was 1822 to about 1824. And so there has been a rewriting of the history in a very racist way, because over in the Dominican Republic, what you had, and it wasn't the Dominican Republic yet, it was the Spanish, it was the colony of Spain, the Spanish possession. And so that's the story as it unfolded there. And Haiti participated in I mentioned the abolition of slavery in several countries of the Americas. And because we were born as a nation in the struggle for slavery, where we had to rely on each other, solidarity and on each other. Solidarity is a word that goes forward very strongly in Haiti. Dessalines used to offer ship captains of slave ships, offer them payment if they would come to Haiti, and Haiti would pay and get many of the African brothers and sisters to come to Haiti. And there were quite a few that came and they got paid, and Dessalines and the people were freed in Haiti. Haiti offered land to brothers and sisters in the US, and many did move to Haiti, particularly in what is today the Dominican Republic. When President, was it Boyer? Yes, President Boyer had kicked out the Spanish. Many of them, some of the lands were turned over to people of African origins, many from the US and others as well. So that's the story, and they had to destroy that, that nation of Black people. So from day one, right after slavery, right after Haiti declared its independence in 1804, Thomas Jefferson made Haiti the country to be destroyed. And he sided with the French. He even gave the French a lot of money to help them in their war to reconquer Haiti, in their war to destroy Haiti as a nation, but also to do a reconquest of Haiti. He set out the policy that the US would not recognize Haitian independence. And that policy lasted until the Civil War in 1862, when finally brothers and sisters in the US were in such a strong position to have a positive impact on the outcome of the Civil War and could exert their political influence on Abraham Lincoln, and that forced them to recognize the independence of Haiti. And so that's how tied in our histories and interconnected they are. So Haiti today, why do I go back in this history to bring it forward? Today, Haiti is going through what you said earlier, Minister. You talked about how the first one has to be made an example of, so that nobody would think of doing this. And that's what they have done. But they have really mischaracterized Haiti many times to make Haiti appear worse than it actually was, so that people would not, Black folks would not want to connect with their brothers and sisters in Haiti and would not want to emulate, would not be encouraged to do it because they would use the propaganda. Were they successful? No, they were not successful, because brothers and sisters in the US, as in many countries of the Caribbean and other places, they knew the reality. They knew whenever the so-called master said some was bad for you, it was good for you. They had that kind of sense. And there were many communities in the US, in the African-American neighborhoods, that called themselves Haiti or Haiti. Well, that's Haiti. That's how it used to be spelled, Hayti. And it was connected, it was a show of pride and who they were, and an affirmation of Black folks, of African people, to stand very strongly and identify with the struggle of their brothers and sisters in Haiti. And so that's, but to bring it to the present, what we had the vision of most of our brothers and sisters, of our foremothers and forefathers, was not only to end slavery, but to build a society of justice, to build a society where their children would be able to go to school, and they too, to build a society where they would be able to eat and farm the land for themselves and build their own wealth. That was their vision. However, even though we defeated the French, but they had built over those centuries of colonialism, they had colonized the minds of so many of our people and turned them into Uncle Toms. And so what happened post-independence was that these Uncle Toms, their vision for the new society was for them to take the place of the Frenchmen and of the Spanish and have everything for themselves, have the big plantations and have people working for nothing for them. And so the majority of our foremothers and forefathers from Africa said, no, we didn't kick out the French so that we can have Black masters or masters with light skin. This issue is about economics. And, you know, Brother Malcolm has a very powerful, he has many powerful speeches, but message to the grassroots. Every time I listen to it, I get something else out of it. And it sheds a great deal of light on what's going on in Haiti today, on the present situation. So what the struggle in Haiti is today, it's a struggle of this generation to complete the Haitian Revolution, the promises of the Haitian Revolution. The promises of the Haitian Revolution was not only to break the chains, but it was also to build a society of justice, a society of truth, a society of righteousness, where our people would be able to live a life of dignity and freedom. Instead, what have we had? We've had all those nations, racist empires, ganging up against these people who were determined, our brothers and sisters who were determined to live a life of dignity, and to crush them and to steal our resources, to use us continually as beasts of burden, to make us work as they used to do during slavery times. And they had that little clique that they would give weapons to, that they would work with, and particularly send us, those missionaries, to destroy our minds and fight against the emancipation of the minds that our African foremothers and forefathers were were doing or in the process of doing. So right now, this is the context into which this struggle is taking place. And so what we've had, despite all their attempts to destroy the culture of the Haitian people, to brainwash us, they haven't succeeded. They are meeting fierce resistance against the imposition of a system that they call neoliberal, but we know it's the same old world order, which is to exploit our people so that our people would not have access to schools, to education, to healthcare, to clean water, give our people some wages that are really, you can hardly live off of that, and keep us always in bondage. And they have invested in a military or police force in Haiti.
Brother Pierre, if I can interrupt and ask a couple of questions. So I had read, maybe you're familiar with this, and this isn't the direct thing that I want to go into, but Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when he was Secretary of State for the United States, wrote the Constitution for Haiti. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. And actually, this is how they lie about the history. Haiti had the Constitution. The original Constitution was written by the generals after the War of Independence.
So Christophe Dessalines.
Christophe Dessalines, and that's the Constitution of 1805. And one of the major features of that Constitution, one of the major articles of that Constitution, was that Haiti, no foreigner could come to Haiti, or no foreign entity. Mind you, Black folks were not considered foreigners. As a matter of fact, in that Constitution of 1805, they said, if you're Haitian, you're Black. So regardless of the shade of your skin, if you're Haitian, you're Black. It says that in the Constitution.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And then the Constitution also forbade any foreigner, meaning white person, to come to Haiti and buy huge tracts of land to act as a master. They forbade that. That couldn't happen. So what Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, because that occupation took place under Woodrow Wilson, birth of a nation, the racist Klan president. When I say that, it comes to my mind that he's not the only one, but we'll deal with that now. So what Delano Roosevelt did, he after the U.S. Marines had invaded Haiti and were there, he did that. He wrote a new constitution for Haiti, which the Haitian people had no knowledge of, because we knew we had our own constitution, and that's what they imposed on the Haitian legislature. And many members of that legislature left rather than vote for it. But then the few Uncle Toms actually voted for it. But still, it didn't mean anything because the masses of the people took up arms. I'm talking about 1915, and it's called the Caco Rebellion. Those were the people who remembered their history and who remembered slavery and who were determined to have a new nation. So they rose up and they fought a major struggle against the Marines. And that, because we didn't have 100%, we had many Uncle Toms who had undermined the movement. So that resistance was actually came to an end. However, it took on another form in the cities and other forms, other ways. And so by 1934, the Marines had to leave Haiti. But I'm sorry, in case you have a question.
No, that's, you know what, you are such a wealth of knowledge. You're not only like Haitian born, but it's just through and through. And I'm so glad that you're able to articulate this for our audience. I want to move forward. Well, okay, there's that part. And then now there's the whole thing about Papa Doc and Baby Doc. Can you go into that? Because you because you said Haitian Uncle Tom's. So you know, I'm going to assume that you're considering you know, that regime, you know, because they seem to have represented the United States to be in that group.
Most definitely, and that's where I was coming. When the connections with Haiti and the US, again, we have a shared history as a people, that we are one people. And I keep repeating that because it's true historically. One of the things that happened, 1915, Wilson was in power, the Klansman president, birth of a nation being shown in the White House and what have you. He selected troops that were from the South, the very racist whites from the South, to do this invasion. And so what they brought with them was that whole Jim Crow attitude. And also, since that time, the US has continued its domination of Haiti. We are talking 106 years of US domination of Haiti, imposing a system that was based on the Jim Crowism in the South. So that throughout the period from 1915 up until 1990, we had nothing but US-style elections suppressing the vote pretty much as it was practiced in the South. And that was what was going on. But what they did was cleverly, they said, well, they are leaving Haiti in 1934. So many Haitians said, yeah, the US left Haiti. And that's what we were fed. But I recently discovered, no, that wasn't true. Because through the Haitian military, and later on, I'm glad you mentioned Papa Doc. Papa Doc was one of the most vicious expression of the US domination on Haiti, because he had the Tonton Marcots who were massacring people, but he was very clever. He talked Black power, you see? He talked Black power to put people to sleep. So in Creole, we have an expression, rat mordé soufflé, meaning when a rat is eating at you, gnawing at your toes and what have you, they usually blow on it as a kind of anesthesia so that you don't feel the pain. So here was Papa Doc massacring Black folks in Haiti, Black people, and then calling himself a Black power advocate, you see? And that way, he pulled the wool over the eyes of many Black folks in Africa, in the Caribbean, and every place else, creating all kinds of confusion. When he was an agent of the CIA, killing his own people at the time. And that confusion really prevented the mass movement in Haiti from receiving the international support that it really needed in order to get rid of the valley and to expose and to show clearly to the world that the US was behind this whole thing anyway. So the Haitian people continued to mobilize, and by 1986, overthrew Duvalier. And by 1990, despite a lot of killings, massacres by the Haitian military, supported, financed, weaponized by the US, people were successful in having the first free democratic elections, where our brothers and sisters, despite the killings, the bombings, and everything else, they elected this young priest of the parishes, of the poor parishes. They elected him president. He didn't want the job, but people told him, brother, it's not what you want, it's what we want, it's what you got to do.
So this is Aristide.
This is President Aristide. And from the day that he started implementing the People's Program, which was our foremothers and forefathers' dream for us, for the future generation. What was the dream? Education, healthcare, resources for the farmers, because the overwhelming majority of Haitians are farmers, and so resources for them. So schools, so that their children could go to school. And Brother Aristide started implementing this program. And he told the US, for example, in the Dominican Republic, Duvalier had a sweet deal where he used to send Haitians to work as cheap labor in the Dominican Republic, and he would get money from the little that they earned. They would give him a cut of that money. That money was supposed to be some kind of an employment insurance when the harvest was done, but he would pocket that money, him and his ministers. And so President Aristide said, no more. We are not sending our people to work as slaves anymore. And so that you had the powerful Dominican military working with the US. They said that young man has to go. After 7 months in office, there was a major coup d'etat against him. 5,000 people were massacred. And but because of the resistance of the Haitian people and the resistance, the solidarity of brothers and sisters worldwide, particularly in the US, and I have to mention so many people, but Randall Robinson comes to mind.
Yes,
Marcus Brooks.
Yes,
you had our
yes.
beautiful sister, Catherine Dunham. Oh my God, she went on a hunger strike, Arthur Ashe, so many others who then there was no way around it, but Aristide had to return. And resistance in Haiti, solidarity abroad. So by 2000, President Aristide again was drafted to run for office. And this time he stayed in office for 3 years, during which time he built so many schools. He built about close to 150 high schools, close to 200 primary schools. But where he built them was very different. He built them in the rural areas.
Excuse me. Let me ask this. I hate to keep interrupting.
No, please do. Please
so this is Lavalas?
This is Lavalas.
Okay.
This is Famille Lavalas, the party of President Aristide.
All right.
And Lavalas means flood, but it's also, it makes reference to biblical reference about the waters of righteousness. You know, all of us coming together as a mighty stream. And that's the reference, because there is a song of the movement that talks about that. And so this is, year 2000, and I believe Baba Ustadi went to Haiti to observe these elections as well. And so the US was mad because they were financing groups to oppose President Aristide, but the masses of our people had determined this is their choice. After 3 years in office and building hospitals and schools and investing in agriculture, investing in the people, and also during that time working on what Bob Marley called to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. All that work was taking place. And Haitian independence, the bicentennial of Haiti's independence was coming, was just upon us, because that's 2004. So in 2003, Brother Aristide made the demand to the French and said, you have to restore the money that you stole from us. And so that money was, at the time, it was evaluated at $21.7 billion at that time. Since then, now in today's money, it's more like $28 billion. And so President Aristide made that demand to the French, and it wasn't just rhetorical stuff, because he had assembled a team of international legal experts who were ready to take action. So the first stage of it was to ask for the money by letter, which he did. The French responded saying nothing doing. Then the next phase was he was going to go to international court with that case. And that's when the French, the US, they all stepped in to get rid of Brother Aristide. And this time during the second coup, it was, over close to 10,000 people were massacred. And not only the killings, but also you had people, families being broken up, people. And to this day, the coup is continuing. People in Haiti never accepted the overthrow of President Aristide. So what did they do? They brought in the United Nations, which is there doing the bidding of the US. They brought in the OAS. Those troops, what they are doing, they actually conducted a number of massacres in Haiti. While the UN has been there, there hasn't been a single free, fair, democratic elections in Haiti. The prisons.
Can I interrupt again?
Yes.
Just so as I recall, with respect to Aristide, wasn't that involving the Bush administration? And Aristide was airlifted to Central Africa. Was that?
That's correct. That's correct.
What became of President Aristide?
That was part of the kidnapping coup d'etat. Both Bushes, Bush the father did the first coup in 1991, and Bush the son did the second coup in 2001. In 2001. No, that was 2004, February 2004. He did the second coup. President Aristide was in exile. He was kidnapped in his home, and I want to recommend Wendell Robinson, who wrote a very powerful book about this. I highly recommend it. And it's called An Unbroken Agony. Agony, A-G-O-N-Y, when somebody's agonizing. Unbroken Agony. Haiti from revolution to the kidnapping of a president. It's one of the most powerful books that I've read about Haiti, written by a brother who knows segregation in the US and fought against it, fought and saw the end of apartheid in South Africa. And with that lens, through that lens and those experiences, he wrote what I believe to be one of the most profound books on Haiti. This book, I urge you to read it, and I put it alongside of C.L.R. James' book, The Black Jacobins, which is the book about the Haitian Revolution.
All right. Yeah.
So President Aristide was in exile. They sent him to the Central African Republic to die. But fortunately, we had Congresswoman Maxine Waters. We had several people, a delegation that went there to rescue him from the Central African Republic, and they brought him to Jamaica, where the Jamaican government was threatened by none other than Condoleezza Rice and also, I believe, Colin Powell, who was Secretary of State at the time, and then the brother Thabo Mbeki from South Africa, the president of South Africa, invited President Aristide to come. And he spent about 7 years altogether in exile, the 7 years in South Africa. Now, he returned because of the continued resistance of the Haitian people and solidarity. He returned to Haiti, him and his wife Mildred, and they returned in March 2011. And I was there, I was with a delegation. And he told us, he said, my next move is to reopen the University of the Aristide Foundation. Now, this university called UNIFA, the University of the Aristide Foundation, it was built with a medical school in mind, with a nursing school, and also laboratory technician, so that when the students graduated, they would go as a unit to work in all the various areas of Haiti where people haven't been receiving healthcare. Now, mind you, the great majority of the Haitian population live in the rural areas, are peasants. And so they work the hardest. Their tax money, they are heavily taxed, which explains why they are so poor. And yet they don't receive any service at all for that tax money that they give. It's a major ripoff. So it's the colonial system that continues, you see, in modern times, because they continue to slave away their labor and their day, but yet their money they make is taxed heavily, and yet they don't get the schools, they don't get the hospitals, they don't get the clean drinking water, they don't get the credit for their farms to invest in the land, and so they have to get loans at at high interest rates that they can never finish paying. And so their lands are taken away, but then they have to work on the land that used to be theirs, but now belongs to some crooked member of the elite for nothing, you see? And this is what the Lavalas movement has said, no, we have to break this system. We have to destroy it. We have to have something new based on equality for our people. And so when President Aristide returned, and he told a group of us who were there, he said, I want to reopen the university. And the university is half men, half women, half young men, half young women, recruited from various areas of Haiti where the people are very, very poor, and the children would have access to no university education. And so they started with about 122 students, and now the school has grown. It's more like close to 3,300 or 3,500, if I remember correctly. They had the first graduation the first graduation took place 7 years after his return, on the same exact date of his return, March 18th, 2000, no, it was in 2018, March 11, 2018. To date, we have 527 doctors who have graduated from this university.
Wonderful, beautiful.
About 120 nurses, 46 physical therapists, because Haiti needs that. These are the victims of the earthquake who need this kind of support. And right now, many of those young people are spread out in teams in different parts of Haiti where the recent earthquake has occurred in the south, and they are providing assistance and healthcare for the people of Haiti. So it's significant, and that's the border. They don't want people to know about him. They don't want people to hear about him, but the Haitian people, he's ours, man. We nurture him, we support him, we love him, and together, you know, he's in the struggle with us. So my God, yes. I've gone on and on. So let me stop right there.
No. You know what? It's so much to this, and really, like an hour and a half is not enough time to devote to that. I mean, just if you were just to take just a segment, each segment that you've talked about, it's so much to it. So when we met, Haiti had just suffered its first earthquake, major earthquake in 200 years, and was a devastating earthquake. And the Clintons were mentioned in the involvement with respect to the fracking that was taking place. Can you speak to that? You know, just address that.
I know that it's been reported by none other than, I believe, former President Hugo, now deceased President Hugo Chavez. He had suspected for a long time that this was no ordinary earthquake. And he suspected that it was something that there was a bit of human activity involved in there. Personally, I don't have anything that tells me, other than statements by President Hugo Chavez and a number of other people as well who have speculated on that or made statements to that effect. But what I know about the Clintons having done, they came to Haiti as to head, particularly former President Bill Clinton, to head the so-called rescue effort or the rebuilding Haiti effort, and monies that were, and he was the head of it. You see, again, that's a reference to Uncle Tom Haitians. How can this man, not being Haitian, and all of a sudden he waltzes into Haiti and they hand him all the keys to everything and he's the head guy, you know, making decisions. And so people were very generous. They had given, it's been estimated about $15 billion. I've heard figures of $11 billion. And really, when you look at what the people of Haiti got out of this, nothing. Maybe some food here and there, maybe a little bit of clean water, but the Red Cross, which collected over close to $600 million, all they built was about 6 houses. And I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nobody could account for where did this money go. The Clintons haven't accounted for it at all. And the other thing that they set up has been sweatshop operations. They were just eager to set up sweatshops all over Haiti, bringing Koreans or some other firms from Korea and other places. One thing that Bill Clinton personally got involved in, the Haitian telephone company owned by the Haitian government that used to provide, that was looked at as a source of funds to invest in the development of the country. Well, he forced some of these Uncle Tom Haitians under Préval. They sold it to the Vietnamese company. From what I've heard, it's headed by the Vietnamese company is the Vietnamese military. That's their company. So that's who they sold it to. And for cheap. And so many other state-owned enterprises were liquidated like that. And it's really shameful. So there is a lot of work that we'll have to do to rebuild our land, to rebuild Haiti. And we count on solidarity from everyone to help us do that.
Pierre, we're coming up at 5:57 now, and I've been asking all the questions, and I'm going to open it up to questions. I see Judy has her hand up, and then I see Katabazi next. And then before we close, please give us either websites or name of organizations that we can, help Haiti, help our brothers and sisters in Haiti at this time. So I'm going to open it up. The first question is coming from Judy. Judy, go ahead.
Okay, well, greetings, everyone. I just wanted to say I'm really, really enjoying the presentation. So informative, and yet, lots of disappointing news to hear, but we've known a lot about Haiti. My question, I had 2 quick questions. One is, and I did want to say it almost sounded like Tarzan, Clinton coming to, Clinton coming to Haiti like the king of the jungle,
Yes, that's it.
But I was going to say now, was there ever, I'm still learning and doing some studying about Booker T. Washington, but I know that he did quite a few things, back in the early, I guess, 1900s and maybe late 18, but was there any efforts? I know Marcus Garvey in Jamaica, there were several Tuskegees, maybe not several, but a few built in different African countries. And as far as was there ever, does anyone know if Booker T. Washington had any efforts to work on the empowerment of Haiti?
Not that I know, but I know that one of the people who was very involved with Haiti was Frederick Douglass. And also Frederick Douglass was highly respected in Haiti. And he was, and during the Chicago World's Fair, when the US racists denied African Americans participation in the Chicago World's Fair, the Haitian government, as an independent nation, had a building. And instead of Haiti sending their own representative there, they named Frederick Douglass as the Haitian representative. That way he had control of the building, and that allowed him to make sure that brothers and sisters from the US would participate in the Chicago World's Fair. The other person who I really...
No, you go, I'm listening.
Yeah, the other person who, and uh, who I really, really appreciate around that period, there are several, but the other person who I really do is James Weldon Johnson. James Weldon
Wow.
Johnson went to Haiti during the period of the occupation, and he did a thorough, and he wrote a thorough report blasting what the US racist government of Wilson and the others had been doing there, and the lies, and he exposed the lies that they were talking about. And it was published into 5 parts in The Crisis. I highly recommend that. So you can do James Weldon. I used to access it by doing James Weldon Johnson, Haiti. Many people do not know that. Very insightful presentation. So
Wow.
there were Haitians who had built schools and were doing different things, but those are 2 significant individuals who came to my mind during that period.
Well, I'm going to yield my second question over to Baba Kadabasi. My question, if there's time to answer after his question, was regarding just a quick update on the pandemic. And you may have already mentioned that, but that I'm going to go over, and please let me yield my time to Baba Kadabasi.
Thank you, Sister Judy. It's good to hear you this evening.
Yes, thank you.
My question is, what is the current political, economic, and socio relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic?
Yeah. Currently, what we have in the Dominican Republic, our 2 people have always been friendly with each other, as people are, but you have the 2 elite. One is, and I put elite in quotation, meaning the ruling classes. The ruling class of Haiti has been an enemy of the Haitian people. And they see the place pretty much just like the colonialist French used to see it, as a place to make quick money, and as a place to do all kinds of drug trafficking, and to take advantage of our people, to pay them starvation wages and exploit them and make big money out of it. So a number of factories that close in the US to reopen in Haiti, because they know if the labor unions are being a little bit, demanding their rights, then all they have to do is seek the death squads on them, because in Haiti today you have a rebirth of the Tonton Macoutes, of the death squad. They call them gangs, but that's who they are, and they are heavily financed by the US. So over in the Dominican Republic, you have the ruling class there, which is using racism, you see, against to create antagonism between the 2 people. But our 2 people understand each other, and but not everyone. There is always some who will fall for the racist attitude. So basically, it's the same dynamics that you had with poor whites, being told that they were superior to blacks, and then like they are being exploited. But instead of them joining forces with black folks, they take pride in the fact that, well, I'm not like you. Yes, I'm being exploited by those same people, but I'm superior to you. That kind of game. So that's what's taking place with the Dominican Republic as well.
How about trade?
A lot of trade between Haiti and the Dominican. Okay. A lot of trade. And one of the things is that there's a big trade imbalance. What we've had in Haiti is that the Dominican Republic now, things that we used to produce massively, eggs, sugar, all kinds of things, plantains and everything. Now, there has been a systematic war to destroy local production, agricultural production in Haiti. So most of that now is coming from the Dominican Republic into Haiti. And there has been an active, and I'm glad you asked that question, there has been an active destruction of local agriculture, of the Haitian economy, of the people-based economy. You see, after independence, our people who had that background in Africa, where they came from, they went to rebuild the Haitian economy at the grassroots level. so that there was a lot of agricultural production, and Haiti was exporting, up to the 1970 when I left Haiti, we were exporting our rice production. We didn't need to import rice into Haiti. Bill Clinton also worked to destroy the rice production in Haiti, so that now Haiti imports most of its rice rather than Haiti producing it. So they've put everything in the way to destroy our people. What comes to my mind is Walter Wadley's powerful book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. When you read that book, you'll understand exactly what's going on today in Haiti. And so the Famille Lavalas organization, the Lavalas movement, and brothers and sisters in Haiti very much understand what's happening and are fighting to change that whole structure that is destroying us as a people. So the trade imbalance is really, it's a very visible part of this destruction of us as a people and of Haiti as a nation. Did I answer your question?
Kadabasi, he said, did he answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Ustadi.
Could you tell us about Jimmy Barbecue Jimmy? Did you talk about that?
No, I alluded to it. Yes. You will see in the media a lot. There was an article in the New York Times about maybe 2-3 days ago, where they are trying to clean up the president who was assassinated, Jovenel Moïse. This man, there is no way to describe him but as a monster. He's a Papa Doc wannabe, Papa Doc Baby Doc wannabe. And his assassination, according to the New York Times, had to do with him keeping a list that of drug dealers that he wanted to, that he was going to fight against them. But I want to dispel that, because that's how myths are born. That's how they rewrite our history. This man was, from the beginning, from day one, during the electoral campaign, he was exposed as having 14 bank accounts on which all kinds of wild transactions were taking place, of big money transactions that were not explained. And so, and that continued. His relationship with narco traffickers has been established by many, including Haitian senators, who went on Haitian radio and TV and talked about it. So when I saw the New York Times coming out with this article and giving it a slant, that exposes several things. One, their continued rewriting of history. Two, how Haitians had been writing about this forever, ever since 5 years ago. People have been writing about this, but that's not given any kind of priority or any kind of importance. But when the New York Times says it, because they are white and they are, all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, it must be true. Well, and that's something with, and now coming to barbecue. Barbecue is the name of a guy who's a killer in Haiti. And barbecue, his name is Jimmy Cherizier, former policeman, but he's been involved in so many massacres in Haiti against the population. I mentioned the coup of 2004, which people never accepted. Almost on a daily basis in Haiti, you've had demonstrations. People are demanding their rights. They are demanding access to education, because the coup itself is not just the changing of President Aristide, but it changed every local official, and it put a stop to all the investment in education. It put a stop to the investment in healthcare. It put a stop to investment in clean drinking water, to road construction. And people are saying, what's happening to my tax money? How come I'm not getting it in terms of services? And so people are demonstrating. And so to keep people quiet or to instill fear They have armed a number of these, what they are calling gangs in the media, but they are nothing but death squads and Tonton Makut paramilitaries that the US government is giving weapons to. And this is no hyperbole. They talk about it through the Haitian government. Many of these guys actually tell it on radio. They make videos that they distribute, and they said, look, this is brand new from the US. Now, what weaponry is going to be? We are talking sophisticated weaponry in the hands of children, young men who are walking on with sandals because they have no money, and they are spraying bullets as if it was out of style, and they show them like that. So barbecue has conducted a number of massacres in Haiti, in neighborhoods where the poor are the working poor, in neighborhoods that are the strongholds of the Lavalas movement, where the people are always demanding their rights and not accepting this. They have set fire, they have burned people alive, they have destroyed houses. Many of the houses were the affordable housing that President Aristide had built for the poor people so they could have their own houses. And I'm talking good, clean houses too. They have set fire to them, destroyed them, while the United Nations is in control of Haiti. You see, this is not something that's happening in the boonies. It's happening right there in downtown Port-au-Prince. And so that's this guy Barbecue. There is a whole series of them. And what they did, just to close on that, they have federated all those death squads. They call it the G9 Federation. The Haitian government has issued them a certificate acknowledging their non-profit status. And then the United Nations and the US are giving money supposedly for disarmament, but these guys more weapons are coming to them, and it's more weapons are coming to them, and this money for disarmament is going into their pockets, and they are much, much more well-armed, and there is no disarmament. So all of it reminds me of South Africa at the height of the anti-apartheid struggle, when they were setting up all of those death squads and groups to attack the people who were standing up and fighting for the destruction of the apartheid system. This is the closest reference I can have in terms of what's happening in Haiti today, to give you a parallel of what's going on. Baba Ostadi, did I miss something that you'd like to add?
Yeah. Did you speak on the Petro-Caribbean money from
Please
Venezuela?
do.
You did?
No, you can mention that.
Okay, can everybody hear me since Pierre put me on the spot? It was President Maduro gave Haiti something like $5 with a B, right? Billion dollars. And the $5 billion to Haiti, when he gave it to him, he stated that the Venezuelan people, like he was talking about prior to, that they owe a debt to Haiti for their independence too. So he was giving the money to help out Haiti, but somehow the money that was supposed to help for infrastructure and all the rest of it, since Venezuela was making a lot of money on the oil they have, somehow it disappeared to the oligarch. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, so it disappeared to an oligarch. So that was $5 billion that never got down on the ground to the poor people where Aristide was really functioning at. That was one thing. The other thing is, if you look at, I don't know if you spoke about the $20 billion that they have to give back to France. That's what Aristide wanted to get that money, right? And I think the average, now we complain about gas here in the US. Gas, a gallon in Haiti is how much, Pierre?
Well, last week it was at $5, $4 a gallon, but last week it was for the past 3 weeks, they had created an artificial shortage where to get it on the street, you had to pay, some places you had to pay $15 a gallon.
And how much do they make an hour?
It's not an hour, $5 for a 10-hour workday.
1 day.
10 hours, yes.
10 hours. You understand what he's saying? Exploitation to the max. So I think one of the things, the way that we as WOSE could help out is through donations. I think that's one of the most important things. And it wouldn't be so bad that the kerosene or the diesel was that high, but they use that for cooking. Am I right, Pierre?
Yes, yes, exactly. And
So
transportation and,
yeah.
you know.
So you can see the problem. That's I think that's a very large problem. And not only that, in 34, when they left out, 1934, when Woodrow pulled out of Haiti, they took $500,000 and put it in the New York bank.
That was gold.
Gold, excuse me.
Yeah,
now you
gold.
see what
supposedly it was, that's what they said the value was, but people believe it was much more. Haiti had its own gold reserves, and that they took it to the US, and we still haven't seen, supposedly for safekeeping. We are children, huh? We need them to safekeep our gold.
Correct. 100%.
And so we never get it.
That's something that we should really be looking at. You know, that to me, it's a twofold story. How do we as African people take back control or help those who have lost control that has a nation? And that's been the United States. Nothing happens in Haiti without the United States being in control. Nothing. I think also when they left out of there was a Haiti agreement that the United States would always be in control. I think that was in 30. I know they left in 34, but I read somewhere. But yes. It's not easy, y'all. We're in the belly of the beast, but somehow the beast still rolling. That's all I really have to say in regards to that piece.
Would you stop asking questions? Are you trying to cheer me up? I mean, this it just gets worse every time you ask a question.
What we're trying to do is get I think if I'm correct, we're supposed to come from coherent understanding.
Yes,
we have
indeed.
a coherent understanding, then it's not a random path that we're on.
All right.
I've been on this path over 20-some years.
I know, man. I know.
One of the positive things that that keeps me going, really, there are many grassroots initiatives where people are building their own schools in the communities, right, where people have people clinics. And one of the shiniest examples of this is the Aristide Foundation for Democracy, which is the University of the Aristide Foundation. From being something that the UN had destroyed completely, because when the United Nations came to Haiti, they took that school, they kicked out all of the students, and they took it over, turning it into military barracks, right? All of the furnishings and everything was stolen. When President Aristide returned, even the electrical wiring was gone. Doesn't that remind us of what the French did in Guinea? You know,
yes,
they took out everything.
Yes.
Light bulbs.
You know?
It's a light bulb.
But President Aristide said, "Can you guys help me rebuild that school?" And the Bay Area and brothers and sisters from all over contributed, helped out. And so now the school not only has been rebuilt, but it's producing doctors, engineers. They have an architecture school. They have a school of agriculture that they just opened. And President Aristide's mom, who turned 100 years old, she gave 100 scholarships to celebrate her birthday to students from all over Haiti, and students who would never make it to the university. These are the things that give us this type of hope for the future, because we are training the young minds of the future.
Sister Judy has a question. Go ahead, Judy.
Well, wow. It's pretty, you know, disappointing, I should say, at the least. But I guess I just was going to ask a question that would have to probably be another show. So I just was wondering, in a couple of words, or a couple of words that would pop out, what would be the some needed solutions. If you had just a magical wand, I guess I was trying to say in words, is it education, unity? I mean, what needs to happen in just a couple of sentences? I know it's a whole nother deeper show for the actual analysis and solutions.
Topmost education. And that's what a number of the grassroots folks in Haiti are focused on. Many of the calls I receive are about, can you help me send my child to school? You know, and Black people everywhere, Haitian parents as well, that's what they want. First thing, help me send my child to school. Sometimes I have to hide because I don't have the means to do it, but through the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, we do what we can to support, to have scholarships and things like that. So that's one thing. Secondly, US foreign policy about Haiti must change. The US foreign policy has been a racist policy from the time that Thomas Jefferson has started implementing it, and it's being followed to this day, regardless of who we have in the White House. Whether it's a Black man, Barack Obama, or someone else, they always follow that policy. The only change was in 1862 when the US recognized Haitian independence. But other than that, the major part of this policy is being applied on Haiti. I want to say this in light of this as well. When we see Haitians ending up on the border of the US-Mexico border and being so brutally and racial and racistly, if I can make that a word, mistreated with all the image that we see, this is exactly what's going on in Haiti. And these brothers and sisters, these are people who are the victims of the 2004 coup d'etat. Those who stood up to say no and had to flee for the most part. They fled to Brazil, they had to flee to Chile and other countries in the Americas. And that's who ends up there. And they are being deported massively. Over 10,000 of them have been deported by the Biden administration, whereas other people are being welcomed with open arms, people with light skin, with white skin or lighter skin. So there is the racism that goes on with US foreign policy. And also this continued war of the US against this nation of Black people that stood up, destroyed slavery. Because let's keep in mind one thing, and I don't want to go too much into this, but that many of the people who are in power, they are representative, they are foremothers and forefathers, not all of them, but many of them were enslavers. And the Haitian Revolution that broke the back of the institution of chattel slavery really started a process that messed with their pocketbook. And so a number of them didn't like that. They may not say it, they may not come out and say it. A few will come out and say it, but some of them are still carrying on this war against Haiti.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Judy.
No, I would just want to quickly say that as I listen to everything, the thing I'm wondering, I don't know a lot, I'm still learning, a new student, but it just seems like one of the major ways things could change would be African Americans, having a major protest and, for policy changes and, maybe like boycotts to really, if this came out to the forefront in the way that it really could, through the music industry, through videos, whatever, it seems like the power lies with us. We could use our economic dollars. And I know that's kind of an ideal situation, bringing us together in this day and age, but that seems to me to be one of the viable solutions, is that we would take have a major revolt here in this country until Haiti is, in a better situation. That's it. Thank you.
Well, also, there's an election coming up. And, you know, the Democratic Party is about to make a mistake with Black people. And we should step up and we should let them know this is part of our agenda. We don't want to militarize the police, but what is your position on Haiti? You know, Mr. Biden, you've deported all these Haitians. What are you doing for Haiti? Are you doing something to, you know, perhaps that should be one of our approaches we should take. We have about 5 minutes, sisters and brothers, and let's take ourselves off mute. And oh, okay, back up. I'm sorry, back up. Mom Ngina has a question. She has her hand up, and then you go, and then I want us to take ourselves off of mute and give Pierre a hand. Don't care if it's off key or up.
It's not a question. It is. I pray for Haiti every day, but now I have to ask personally you. And I was at Wose when you and your darling wife, Sister Soyan, came to Wose. And my prayer is just for your safety, for your continued blessings, and that the Most High continue to guard you and keep you for all you're doing. And that's just it. Just prayers.
Yes, amen. Ashe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you. And someone that asked, oh, I'm sorry.
So Ann is not his wife.
Akanke has her hand up. Go ahead, Akanke. Go ahead.
No, that was my clapping.
Oh.
Let me say, someone had asked earlier how they can. Let me give you a couple of websites.
Yes, can you put those in the chat? Would you be able to do that, Pierre?
Yeah, I think so. Let me try to get that. But one of them is the Haiti Action Committee. And Haiti, and the website is HaitiSolidarity.net. I'm going to put it in the chat there. And the other one is the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, HaitiEmergencyRelief.org. Let me see, some just came up on my screen here, which is blocking the chat. Okay, let me do this. HaitiSolidarity.net. .net.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there something, a brief or something that we can share with people to let them know what's going on? I mean, you gave us a lot of information, but is there like a summary that we can just send out and say, you know, this is what's going on, help, you know, go donate, send money, or do, you know, this is what we need to do?
Yes, there is. And I have to say, one of them that I would like to send you is an article by Baba Ustadi. He wrote a beautiful article. There is a couple of articles that are very good, and I can definitely send you something from the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund that shows the solidarity that we practice, and thanks to all the support that we have received from brothers and sisters in the community, we've been able to get that into Haiti and to help the brothers and sisters in their struggle to change the system. Because these are the groups we work with, groups that are engaged in changing the system, in fighting for change. So I can definitely send that to you. A few of those. Not to overwhelm you, but send you enough.
No, well, I learned things that I had no idea. So yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Likewise.
A couple of things that Pierre, if you notice in the chat, he put HaitiSolidarity.net and HaitiEmergencyRelief.org. And I put a couple of things in our chat, sisters and brothers. I put the book. Let me share my screen here. Here's the book that he mentioned by Randall Robinson. We're going to, oh, wow, I wish it was bigger. Sorry about that. I thought that you can't really tell the pictures. Let's see, wait a minute. Maybe, hey, we can zoom in.
All right.
All
Yes.
right. All right. So here's the book, Randall Robinson and an Unbroken Agony. And it's focusing on how President Aristide was kidnapped from his own country. When have you heard that? Kidnapped. And they use us to help. Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell. You know, they use us against each other. That's how they're able to stay in power. They use us to maintain their power. Brother Pierre, you taught us so much.
One last book I want to mention, and I forgot, and very important, by President Aristide. There is a big movement afoot in Haiti. It's called décolonisation mentale, mental decolonization. And President Aristide has a book that's really you would enjoy. It's called Philosophical Reflections for Mental Decolonization. That book was written in Creole, and the Haitian people have been using it and reading it. And it's a major campaign that we realize that in order for Haiti to move forward, we have to stop this. We have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, to quote Brother Bob Marley.
So could you give us the title again, Pierre?
Yes, Philosophical Reflections for Mental Decolonization. Philosophical Reflections for Mental Decolonization. I'll try putting it in the chat. Philosophical
Reflections for Mental Decolonization by Aristide. How is his name spelled?
Jean like Jean, Bertrand, B-E-R-T-R-A-N-D, Jean Bertrand.
Just the last name.
Okay. A-R-I-S T-I-D-E. Let me put in the chat there.
Yes. All right. Thank you. So, you know, you've taught us so much. We did. Who would have known James Weldon Johnson's role in helping Haiti? What a beautiful tribute. And brother, I think everyone on here and everyone that sees this, you know, just is really touched and I think at the same time re-energized, you know, because thank you. I see you have it in there. Re-energized with the icery.
Turned out over this corner.
As they say, the icery, as the Rastas say, of Haiti. There's a wonderful song by the dub poet Muta Baruka on Haiti.
Yes,
that's beautiful. And also the late Bunny Ruggs, who was the lead singer of Third World, dedicated a song to Haiti and the Haitian people. It's called "The Spirit Lives." The spirit, the spirit lives, living in the people, and it will never, ever, ever die. You know, so those two songs that I know of dedicated to Haiti. Brother Pierre LaBossiere, we love you. We love the Haitian people. We feel the solidarity with you. We thank you for coming, and I know that this won't be your last time coming among us, giving us updates, what's happening, and actually giving us some guidance in how we can be part of the upliftment of our people in Haiti.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
you.
you,
It's
brother.
been a real honor.
Thank you.
It's been a real honor. Thank you.